While Springfield may not be the most moral place around, its residents still tend to land in the good or gray areas of the morality spectrum. Even troublemakers like Bart and Homer can still be decent people. However, there are still those residents who fit perfectly in the dark side. But which of these characters only act bad, which ones are truly bad, and which ones are downright evil? I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is The Simpsons Villains, Evil to Most Evil. We're gonna start with the least bad and work our way down to the most evil. And since we're starting with the more minor threats, we have no choice but to put Nelson Muntz as our least evil character. Nelson has certainly had an interesting arc over the course of this 30-plus season series. Some may even argue that he isn't even a bad character, fitting more on the morally gray side these days. Still, he was certainly considered a villain all the way back in Season 1's Bart the General, where he beat Bart to a pulp for several days straight, bringing the poor kid to tears at one point. From there, Nelson mostly did typical bully things, from cheating in the soapbox derby race, to threatening Bart and Milhouse, to stealing from several students and even Superintendent Chalmers.
You're going to give back everything you've stolen.
He could be a pretty bad influence on people like Bart, and even when Lisa believed that he could be good, he was willing to betray her to both save face in front of his gang and get back at Principal Skinner. Though there were certainly other bullies at Springfield Elementary, none of them really held the presence that Nelson did in those early years, given that he was often the leader of the group. However, as the show has gone on, he's softened up significantly. We've seen him form friendships with Bart and Lisa, as well as several moments where he's been on the side of good, such as when he tried to figure out the circumstances behind Martin's death and dial N for Nerder, or when he helped Lisa get back at Sherry and Terry and sleeping with the enemy. Though he can still be aggressive and act like a bully in later seasons, you easily get the sense that it's more out of frustration and a lack of positive influences than anything else. Next up, we have Marges' sisters, Patty and Selma. Like Nelson, they aren't particularly evil per se, but they can certainly be antagonists, to say the least. It's no secret that they hate Homer as much as Homer hates them, and whenever it seems like Homer is about to die, they revel in it and offer no real comfort to Marge. They also tend to try and manipulate Marge into leaving Homer whenever it seems like they're about to break up. When they're not trying to put a wedge between them, they're often just being antagonistic to Homer in general. In the episode Homer vs. Patty and Selma, they let Homer borrow money from them and taunt him with it throughout the episode, despite Homer already feeling plenty of shame about it.
Homer's getting ready to give us a foot rub.
As for Marge, even as kids, the three of them weren't too close, and as older sisters, they would often try and mess with Marge, discourage her, or force her into doing their chores. Probably the most villainous they've ever been is in the episode Wedding for Disaster, where they straight up kidnap Homer just so he doesn't remarry Marge. So yeah, these are some pretty awful sisters. However, their awfulness really only extends to Homer and occasionally Marge. They clearly care about each other and are decent aunts to the Simpsons kids, with Selma being a pretty alright mother to her daughter Ling. Selma was also the one to tell Marge where Homer was in the flashback episode I Married Marge. I suppose technically not the worst relatives a family could have, but there's definitely a reason no one really likes when they visit. Moving on to Wayland Smithers. Now, as Mr. Burns' right-hand man, you would think that this guy would be a lot lower on our list. But while there's no real excuse for simply following orders, when Smithers isn't being ordered around by Burns, his own actions really aren't that evil. Though he can be a jerk when he wants, like when he grumbles at employees or when he tries to get Homer fired after being jealous of his success in Simpson and Delilah, he's mostly a reasonable guy.
Now I've got you, Simpson.
He'll sometimes get a temper when pushed to his limits of anger and jealousy, and even fought Homer at one point. But even this you can somewhat forgive since you can understand his frustration. What really sets him apart from his boss/crush is that Smithers has lines he won't cross. He protects Homer in Blood Feud when he doesn't want to see him get beaten up, and he stands up to Burns when Burns tries to block out the sun. The fact that he has a bit of morality already makes him less evil than Burns. Still, when he is willing to follow his boss's orders, Smithers is able to do some pretty awful things. from assisting with puppy kidnapping, to actually kidnapping Tom Jones, to helping Burns cheat in the big nuclear power plant softball game. On his own, he's a nice enough guy, but when you bring in all that he's done and is willing to do for Mr. Burns, you kinda have to consider him a villain on some level. Next up, we have Dwight Diddlehopper and Jack Crowley, two one-time characters who have similar enough morality levels. Coincidentally, they both also have a relationship with Marge. Dwight was a small-time bank robber, while Jack was an artist that was serving time. When Marge first meets Dwight, he manages to convince him to give himself up and promises that she'll visit him in prison.
See you soon, Marge.
Real soon.
When Marge breaks this promise, Dwight escapes and kidnaps her, taking her to the amusement park where his mother abandoned him and wanting to spend time with a motherly figure like Marge. As for Jack, he was also a small-time crook and had been arrested for shooting Apu. After Marge saw his amazing art, she tried to get him on a better path and even got him a job painting a mural for Springfield Elementary, though this would end up backfiring majorly. While neither Dwight or Jack are evil, they certainly have made some questionable decisions. Dwight was willing to injure himself to save the day, but then tried to convince Marge to help him escape jail again after he was healed. He's also fairly mentally unstable in general. Jack, meanwhile, let his anger get the better of him when he decided to torch not only the mural, but also Skinner's car. And he even tried to lie to Marge about it.
I burned the mural, but I did not burn Skinner's car.
While Marge certainly tried to help these guys get back on the side of good, it unfortunately just didn't work out. Speaking of Marge, next we have Artie Ziff, Marge's ex. From the first time they met, Artie and Homer were romantic rivals, with Artie seeing Homer as an oaf and Homer seeing Artie as a snob and a jerk. While Artie was sweet towards Marge, he was also more than a little pushy with her on their prom night. And as pushy as Artie could be, he could also be creepy and manipulative, not to mention pretty obsessed with his one-time date. When he was rich, he tried to use his wealth and influence to trick Marge into falling for him, even recreating their prom night and trying to force her to kiss him.
Get off me, you little nerd!
Then, in the Ziff Who Came to Dinner, Artie ends up pinning all of his debt onto Homer and getting him arrested. Considering how nice Homer was to Artie in that episode, even after all their history together, that's pretty low. What keeps him from being put any higher is that, as narcissistic and awful as Artie can be, he still tends to make the right choice and try to make up for his actions when he sees how much they hurt Marge. He's also never tried to actually kill Homer, and as much of a low bar that is, we still give him credit for not falling into that particular jealous ex trope. Snake Jailbird is probably Springfield's most famous and infamous crook. He's constantly escaping jail and committing crimes, usually at places like the Quickie Mart or Moe's Tavern. He's even attacked the Simpsons a couple times, albeit non-canonically, like in the Treehouse of Horror segment, Hell to Pay, and in the second Simpsons clip show. While he mostly just robs businesses and homes, he's also stolen cars, cows, and on one occasion, Mr. Burns' girlfriend, Gloria. He even tried to run down Bart in the season 3 episode Separate Vocations, so while he doesn't do it often, he's not above hurting a child in his worst moments. Thankfully, Snake is more interested in robbing people than killing them, which keeps him from being placed any lower. Another famous Springfield robber is Miss Botts, aka the Babysitter Bandit. Though she's only had one appearance, it was definitely a memorable one. And not just because of that one animation clip you keep seeing on your Twitter timeline. As part of a babysitting service, Miss Botts has made it a habit of tying up the kids she's supposed to be babysitting and robbing their homes, escaping before the parents get home and changing her identity to avoid being caught. The fact that she's been able to successfully do this several times is both impressive and scary.
Guess you need to be tied up too.
If there's any bright side to her crimes, it's that Miss Botts never actually injures her victims, though she does threaten to. Honestly though, you have to be a pretty despicable person to be willing to rob a family's home right in front of them. Moving away from the thieves to the more threatening characters, we have Herman. Known for being more than a little shady, Herman is a minor character that walks the line between being weird and being an actual criminal. For the most part, Herman focuses on running his antique shop where he sells ordinary items claiming they're historical. This isn't that big of a crime, but it's still shady, and it only gets worse from there. When Bart is trying to fight back against Nelson, Grandpa recruits Herman into helping them.
How many men do you have?
None.
You'll need more.
Although it's just a water balloon fight, Herman takes it with all the seriousness of an actual war, showing just how unstable he can be. Though he doesn't get too many instances to shine as a villain, we see that he's willing to kidnap, threaten people, and hold them hostage in 22 short films about Springfield. Given that this scene is an homage to the film Pulp Fiction, you know that whatever Herman was planning, it wasn't going to be good. Herman also ran a counterfeit jeans operation out of Homer's garage in the Springfield connection. When Marge busted him, Herman took Homer hostage and actually tried to kill Marge. This character is probably one of the darkest ones in the show, with his schemes feeling a bit more serious than Snake's. Maybe that's why the writers tend to keep him as a background character. Next is Frank Grimes Jr. Now, we're sure fans of Grimy are a bit miffed that we're putting his son on the list instead of Grimes himself. While we acknowledge that Grimy was indeed a jerk, and him trying to humiliate Homer when he reached his limit was definitely a bad move, Grimy really only caused harm to himself. His son, however, decided to take his anger towards Homer one step further and actually tried to murder him. He first tried to kill Homer by locking him in an overheating sauna. He then just tries shooting Homer, first at Moe's bar, then at a Mardi Gras parade, after cutting the brake line on his float. When he's finally caught, Junior explains that he only tried to kill Homer because Homer, in a sense, killed Grimy by accidentally driving him insane.
How is old Grimy?
He's dead!
Though we can certainly understand Junior's side and can even feel sympathy for him, we can't exactly excuse several murder attempts. Moving on to Jack Lacen. Jack was another one-time character, acting as Bart's temporary teacher in season 26, Blazed and Confused. Instead of acting as a mature role model for his students, Jack is a bully and focuses on tormenting Bart the most. He sees his bullying as a means of discipline and focuses on humiliating students like Bart and Nelson instead of actually trying to teach them how to be better people. Later on in the episode, when Bart and Milhouse ruin the Blazing Guy festival effigy that he was trying to light, Jack tries to torch Bart and Milhouse instead as a means of revenge.
We can still have Blazing Boy.
Though certainly not the only villain on this list who's tried to kill a kid character, he's the only one we see trying to light his young victim on fire. After he's fired from Springfield Elementary, Jack gets a new job as a prison warden, a job he says will reward him for his, quote, sociopathic tendencies. He even tries to strike up a partnership with Sideshow Bob, after he learns how much Bob hates Bart too. If that doesn't tell you all you need to know about this guy, I don't know what will. Next, we have another famous criminal, Fat Tony. As the head of the Springfield mob, Fat Tony is no stranger to some pretty serious crimes. We first see him try to teach Bart the ways of being a mobster, and when Principal Skinner goes missing and is assumed dead, Fat Tony tries to pin the whole thing on this 10-year-old boy.
That's the guy.
Though he was innocent in that instance, other episodes have shown that he isn't above murder. He's also frequently trying to manipulate people like Mayor Quimby with his money-making schemes, and will threaten anyone he has to, no matter who they are. Surprisingly, though he didn't understand his son Michael's desire to be a chef, Fat Tony is still a decent father to him. Though this shows that he isn't totally heartless, it still doesn't do much to help Fat Tony seem any more moral, especially since Michael still ends up following in his footsteps. Though he may be a bit of a mobster stereotype, his greed and willingness to blackmail and kill are all too real. Next, we have the monorail con man, Lyle Laneley. A sort of Music Man parody, Lyle does much more than simply steal $3 million from a city. With his manipulation tactics, he manages to convince the entirety of Springfield, minus Marge, to let him build a monorail for them. Naturally, the monorail is shoddy, driven by, without a doubt, the worst choice for a conductor, Homer Simpson. Though he doesn't try to actually kill anyone himself, you could argue that Lyle Laneley is essentially putting dozens of monorail riders at risk of injury and death with his uncaring and selfish nature. He clearly doesn't care what happens to the residents or the city after the monorail is built. Instead, Lyle is only interested in taking the money and running. As if this wasn't bad enough, Lyle was greedy enough to do this scam with 3 other cities. With the aftermath being pretty bad, as we see that North Haverbrook was pretty much abandoned and in ruins after their monorail crash. He probably would have kept doing this scam too, if not for the fact that karma finally caught up to him, and he was beaten up by the same people he scammed. Though he may be a charmer, we feel his cons can't be overlooked or understated. Entering our top 5, we have supervillain Hank Scorpio. And this guy was very hard to rank. On the one hand, Hank is one of the nicest characters we meet. He's respectful towards Homer and his family, gives them numerous gifts, and even tries to offer Homer advice. It's no wonder that Homer felt so happy and fulfilled in his new job. But, on the other hand, he is literally a James Bond-esque villain, trying to take over the world. We see him kill a spy, threaten the United Nations, destroy the Queensboro Bridge, and eventually he even manages to take over the East Coast after successfully fighting the US government.
On your way out, if you want to kill somebody, it would help me a lot.
So yeah, this guy is without a doubt a major threat. But he never acts like it. At least, he doesn't act like it towards his employees, being extremely generous with pay and benefits, and always being nice and lighthearted when interacting with them. If we're looking at only his actions, he's on the level of Mr. Burns in terms of his crimes and his power. If we're looking at his personality, you could make a case for him being in the gray area, or even on the side of good. So it's pretty complicated. Even so, we can't exactly ignore all of the evil that Hank Scorpio has done, even if we may want to. So we felt that placing him within our bottom 5 was a good compromise, with his genuinely kind personality preventing him from being put in the bottom 4. Next we have Sideshow Bob. Though you may be able to make an argument that Bob is the most evil character on The Simpsons, what with all the murder he's attempted over the years, there's enough back and forth with him that we felt that we could drop him a bit from the top spot. That being said, this guy is still very evil. While wanting to kill Bart is his most infamous trait, he's also manipulative and has committed several other crimes along the way. From robbing the Quickie Mart to election fraud to identity theft. But as cruel and, let's face it, criminally insane as Bob can be, the guy still has a heart. He cared about his wife and son, and has honestly tried to turn his life around at least a few times, even if it never quite worked out.
Even the most heinous criminal deserves a 7th chance.
He saved Springfield from being flooded, and despite the two of them being enemies, Bob has also saved Bart a couple times, showing that he's willing to push revenge aside, if only occasionally. We also see him being friends with Krusty in the later seasons, showing that there's no hard feelings between them. While he may be just a bit too far gone at this point to ever truly become good, those very brief moments of goodness are still something we can appreciate. Following Bob, with the Bronze Medal of Evil, is his brother, Cecil Terwilliger. While not nearly as famous as Bob, you could argue that Cecil is just a bit more callous than him. When Bob genuinely tried to turn his life around, Cecil only took advantage of him as a means of revenge. He was always jealous of his brother for getting to be on the Krusty the Clown show, and decided to not only take that jealousy out on Bob, but on Springfield as a whole. When he was hired to build a hydroelectric dam for the town, Cecil purposely built the dam poorly so he could take the cash for himself, not caring if he ended up flooding the town.
I'm framing you, and I'm doing a really excellent job, too.
When Bob and the Simpson kids tried to stop him, Cecil in turn tried to blow up the dam in the hopes of killing them. Later on, when Bob tries to fake his own death as part of another scheme, Cecil assists in it alongside the other members of their family, showing that any jealousy or anger he may have had towards his brother might have passed. Although Bob has certainly done more crime than his brother, Bob has also been seen regretting his actions and trying to do better, while his brother doesn't seem to mind being evil. For that, we feel we have to place him just a tiny bit lower. It might be a little surprising to know that the Silver Medal of Evil goes to none other than Mr. Burns. Because honestly, what hasn't Mr. Burns done? As a businessman, Mr. Burns puts wealth and power above all else. He doesn't care about environmental laws, or really any laws in general, and certainly isn't above resorting to bribery in order to get out of punishment, or getting what he wants. We see just how low he can go in Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1, where he essentially screws over the entire town in major and minor ways. In his day-to-day life, he's cruel towards his employees, while his main business, the power plant, pollutes the city. Burns also has a huge rivalry with Grandpa Simpson. We see him use underhanded tactics to try and steal Jacqueline Bouvier from Grandpa, and then when we see him try to kill both Grandpa and Bart in order to get his hands on the flying hellfish treasure. Not the first first time he tried to kill Bart either, having run him over in season 2 and then threatening to shoot Bart and Lisa after kidnapping their puppies, which he wanted to make into a fur vest. It was also Burns' vendetta against Mona Simpson that prevented Homer from having a mother, always getting in the way of the two of them reuniting.
It's her at last.
Not only is Mr. Burns one of the most powerful villains in The Simpsons, but he's also the most personal, having betrayed, offended, or fought every single member of the Simpsons family on at least one occasion. But while he can be one of the cruelest people in Springfield, Burns still isn't completely heartless. Occasionally, he'll show concern and care for Smithers, even saving his life in the episode Midnight RX. He'll also sometimes choose to be nice, but often change his mind or forget the lesson he's learned, simply because it's just not in his nature to be kind or generous. For all that he's done and is willing to do for the sake of his own wealth and status, we feel that's more than enough to give him the silver medal of evil. And with that said, in our bottom spot, the gold medal of evil goes to Russ Cargill. While Mr. Burns and Sideshow Bob are the most prevalent villains in the series, Russ Cargill took the spotlight in the Simpsons movie. He's described as someone who's gone mad with power, and when it comes to the environment, he's willing to put his own ego and the so-called safety of others above the lives of an entire town. He's also connected to the company that makes the dome that the government uses, so let's just add financial greed on there as well.
I do own the company that makes the dome, but that's beside the point.
We see Russ become a lot more desperate after the Simpsons manage to outsmart him and escape the dome. And when he sees that the residents of Springfield are trying to escape as well, Russ decides to just blow them all up instead of actually trying to, do anything else. While trying to protect the environment may sound good on paper, it sounds less good when you start to see people, especially innocent citizens, as expendable. Russ also tries to kill both Bart and Homer after they destroy the dome once and for all.
We meet at last, whoever you are.
Unlike Bob and Mr. Burns, who can occasionally show that they have a good side, no matter how small that side of them may be, Russ literally has no good side, and would have had a body count in the thousands had he succeeded. He's manipulative, self-serving, and cruel, and we can think of no one more deserving of our gold medal of evil. But with all that said, what do you think? Let us know in the comment section who you think is the most evil villain in Springfield. And make sure to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.